Claiming that Filipino films are subpar and has only seen commercialized and Romcom movies are not valid. Like, Romcoms don't define Philippine cinema.
Claim the independence of the Philippines.
Filipinos, after developing their consciousness and fighting against their colonizers, are now faced with another threat to their freedom. The martial law under Ferdinand Marcos made Filipinos fight another oppressor and the long-standing imperialism. This, however brutal, paved the way to build Filipino cinema.
No tears for them, absolutely no tears.
And has trickled down to today's mainstream success of love teams and rom-coms. And this made the work of pioneering Filipino filmmakers to get tainted. But how did it came to be? So the 1950s was deemed to be the golden age of Philippine cinema, as it gained a lot of momentum to articulate a national identity. And this is in tandem with American influences such as the star system, and where people claim love teams have originated from, and as well as the establishment of Philippine cinema. If you want to learn more, click the link in the bio for the first part of this series, where I extensively discuss the history of Philippine cinemas in the 50s and prior. Anyway, so in the process of reclaiming the identity of Filipinos, there's another thing coming to halt everything.
I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law.
It dramatically shifted the landscape of Philippine media. Democracy fell as the implementation of censorship in television, specifically in the news, as well as some restriction in films in the mainstream, came into being. And in the circumstance, this decade sets the need for inquisitive and oppressed Filipinos to develop a conscious way of recreating, portraying what it means to be Filipino, going beyond what Filipino filmmakers have started. Though, what is its relevance to culture and the filmmakers who make up cinema? Well, as a Filipino filmmaker, researching about this topic, I was kind of like shocked, really, by the depth of the art of Filipino cinema. And for so long, I heard and saw the quality of Filipino movies, and I thought they weren't great. In school, I would see and hear people look down on Filipino movies until I realized they were all pretentious, and in turn, so was I. And this doesn't just exclude people outside of my community. There are Filipinos who sort of get insecure whenever the identity of Filipino and Filipino movies are brought up.
My dad's Irish, my mom's Spanish. I can drink a lot and then I get fucking spicy.
Okay.
I have a theory as to why. One is that they probably are traumatized by the hyper-commercialization of movies that has pretty much stayed the same in the last 20 years, and that has just been recycled over and over. But this is true for so many Hollywood films as well, like Marvel. They all follow the same format of the hero's journey. And two, they probably are traumatized by having that identity of being a Filipino, and that they don't want that projection.
Filipinos are somehow being taught to be ashamed of their culture. No? Ito yung legacy ng pagka-colonial natin.
And going back to Marcos' dictatorial rule, it like forced an environment for Filipino creatives to really progress cinema. Ishmael Bernal is one of the visionary filmmakers of Philippine cinema, as he masterfully depicts the typical Filipino exemplified in his works like Himalay in 1982 and Manila by Night in 1980. While Lino Broca, on the other hand, tells the story of the everyday Filipinos that work hard to survive in the harsh reality of a developing country.
Lino's best films are about the CDE masa. Bernal's best films are middle-class films.
Also, I would like to add that Lino Broca is a big part for bringing representation for queer folks, pioneering it in the Philippines and Philippine cinema, because he brought in queer narrative in one of the biggest films as known internationally, in his film Manila in a Class of Light. And finally, Maria Lydia Sabayo redefined the role of women in Philippine cinema, and this depiction is heavy in her film Moral, with the intersection of the life of the four women in the film, the issues they face, and the decisions they would make that are not socially acceptable, shows the complexity of them more than their gender, but more as a human being. Maybe having the four characters, the four women in Moral, can reveal something about the projection that makes it hard to justify, to identify as being Filipino. that having to sort of escape it through a promise by another colonizer is the only way. Perfumed Nightmares is about a dream and a migration of a jeepney driver. Hidata Hime comments on the Filipinos' desire to leave, a desire set in motion by our colonizers, which is more obviously portrayed in Hollywood.
And so sometimes we forget to connect with ano ba talaga yung ginhawa na hinahanap ng Pinoy.
Perfumed Nightmares show this level of consciousness from Kidnat Tahimek as a filmmaker and as an artist, and also as a Filipino. It completely showed the reality of leaving a country starting but nothing but a dream and quickly turning into a nightmare that is perfumed. This is just a testament to a lot of Filipino artists who dared to express free thinking, which is endearing and kind of similar to our national hero Jose Rizal. Our pride and nationalism that got us to overthrow one oppressor to another, which leaves a lasting imprint to our will to fight for our identity.
Corazon Cojuangco Aquino,
Corazon Cojuangco Aquino,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and conscientiously
and conscientiously
fulfill my duties
fulfill my duties
as President of the Philippines.
as President of the Philippines.
After martial law, when Cory Aquino took over in 1986, unfortunately, the country was beset with major economic problems. You know that film did not develop much during those years.
So despite the economic state after the martial law ended in the 1980s, Filipino filmmakers had more creative freedom. This shaped the industry and helped rom-coms become one of the most profitable genres in Philippine cinema today. Rom-coms have become a staple in Philippine cinema. It's gained so much popularity that every single Metro Manila Film Festival, a big film festival in the Philippines, at least one of them is gonna be a rom-com. For instance, Hello Love Again, a rom-com released in 2019, made about 900 million pesos, and its sequel, Hello Love Again, has surpassed over 1 billion pesos. So this is what people are seeing and forming their opinions on Philippine cinema. And successful as it had become, this genre of film can make studios or production companies to be reliant on this type of movies. And truly, it quickly escalated into the films being formulaic. Liza Soberano, a Filipino-American actor who started her career in the Philippines and has recently shifted in Hollywood, talks about this experience in a podcast.
In the Philippines, it's very conservative and also very one-dimensional, I would say.
See, this rhetoric or perception against Philippine cinema is widespread, and the problem here is that movies with conscious filmmaking approach had been there and are very much present, but people do not gravitate towards them.
Pwede ba kitang paikutin sa flagpole 100 times? Hingin ko yung ihi mo para patunayan na mabuti kang tao.
Liza Soberano compares how American films are more exploratory.
Yeah, in America, I would say everything's very exploratory. Everything's kind of, they're always just trying to find new things to do.
And they can pull an audience to watch it, which I honestly agree, and it's a fair assessment given that the film industry is a risky and expensive business. However, she also said that she likes to make art and that she considers her work as art. But now my question is that why didn't she work with a Filipino director that has an exploratory filmography instead of perpetuating the same rhetoric that sort of degrades the long and rich history of Philippine cinema? There are a lot of Filipino films that sort of are in that same caliber, that sort of explores different types of characters in the depths of their humanity, going back all the way to the 70s and beyond. And this experience from a seasoned Filipino actor poses different alleyways of thinking what makes Filipino be seen in a bad light with the perception of a bad taste. It begs the question of what good taste looks like. And maybe it's an audience problem. And Liza Soberano did talk about how these big networks in the Philippines strategize to pull an audience. It's called love teams. It's when they put together two actors in basically method acting, if you will, because they want them to act like they're a couple where they're constantly promoting the films that they're gonna be in. And this made it detrimental for them to stay together or the fans will be disappointed and would heavily affect their careers. Now, it's totally fair if Liza Soberano is leaning towards the business side of the entertainment industry is an important and valid reason to make the decision to go to Hollywood and seek better opportunities to fit her goal as an artist. However, in the case of not having a film to be on because they're all one-dimensional characters, it's not entirely accurate. Recently, a Filipino film director, June Lana, posted this on Threads. So June Lana posted a response to an unnamed critic and how they assess Philippine cinema based on their narrow view or experience of the medium. People from Reddit claim that it was from this account. This user commented on how performative a lot of the Filipino movies are. However, this user did not say anything about romcoms, but rather used a still image from a romcom Filipino film. Though it's still worth mentioning that this is part of a larger issue, and this sort of rhetoric of Philippines being bad seems like it's coming from misinformed audiences exposed to hyper-commercialized films or movies that's, you know, been marketed to a lot of people, and those people consider that as Philippine cinema. And someone on Reddit made a really good point about access. A lot of these less mainstream movies are kind of hard to find, and most of them won't even see the light of day in any cinema. And this kind of makes it hard for the average moviegoer to see these films. And people usually wait and hope to see if these less mainstream films are gonna be on streaming platforms like Netflix or YouTube. Also, they only really get distributed or shown in film festival, like this June Lana film, Your Mother's Son, I saw back in 2023 at Toronto International Film Festival. For those who don't know, director June Lana is one of the directors that's completely changing the game, as his films explore and expand on the stereotypical characters that people are familiar with seeing on the mainstream lineup. Which honestly is not surprising because he was mentored by none other than Marilu Diaz-Zabaya. And honestly, in my opinion, in the context of having a good taste, I think Americans just have a stronger influence that tends to be reductive of Philippine cinema, going back to the myth of special relations, which I kind of talked about in my last video. Philippine cinema serves as a window of how Filipino culture came to be, going through different colonizers and fighting against multiple oppressors. It shows how much Filipino people have endured and how far Filipino cinema has come. And as this shift of cinema keeps going, we see a new side of it that could reshape cinema. The new media, with the progression of AI, might very well end cinema as we know it. More of that in the next video.